where it popped in my head. And in fact, we were back this Sunday before last, visiting again, and you know, it didn't come up. So anyway, but I just don't know, John.
I haven't seen him either he or text in a long time.
Yeah. Well, we ain't seen much of each other in general in a long time. You know,
That's right.
the Zoom's been nice, and we've had a little bit of opportunity here to start getting back out, but we're still a long ways from the days of just the wide open social circuits we all used to run in. You know,
We sure are.
yeah, I'm hoping we're going to get back there here before too much longer.
Hopefully we can get everybody vaccinated. All the
Yeah.
little ones too.
I missed all those good Christmas parties last year. I don't know about you guys.
Yep.
My Sunday school class has done pulled the plug on their party again this year. I mean, we couldn't get the facility we normally get to use, and so we just said one more time.
Which class are you in?
I'm in a Unity class. Meets right around the corner from where I started.
Well, not at church.
I can't hear you with all the background info. Background noise.
Get ready, ring the bell.
Good afternoon, Cary Rotary Club. Welcome to the friendliest club in District 7710. And I guess now that Cary no longer requires masks, I can truly say the best looking, the most attractive smiles of any Rotary Club at District 7710. Welcome. We've got a great program on a beautiful November afternoon. In order to get started, I wonder if I can ask Dr. Charlie Mann to lead us in the prayer and pledge.
Almighty Father, everything we have comes from you. Before we have men and women of service, show us, help us to be tolerant, to share, to be inclusive. And we thank you today for this food and our friends, the fellowship we have, our faith and freedom. Now, since we're inspired by you and loved by you, place us in a place of opportunity and service to you through Jesus our Lord. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, that's an interesting question. You know, I mentioned that the town of Cary went through its change to, and as well as the McGregor, to no longer require masks. So it's great to see our helpers and servers and their smiling faces too. The board did have a conversation last week about whether to make any changes to our protocols. We think it's appropriate to follow the dictates of the town of Cary. But we do also still think that it's probably appropriate for us to just put off singing for a little while longer. So I'll say, God bless America. And of course, we haven't mentioned it for a while, but you know, we strongly encourage everyone to be vaccinated. I won't make the Aaron Rodgers mistake of referring to immunization. Specifically, we encourage folks to get vaccinated as appropriate for their age. And we continue to welcome those that make a decision to attend online as well. So with that, can I ask Ralph Ashworth to share some news about one of our members? Ralph.
Okay. Well, most of you are sure that Curtis Westbrook had a heart attack and had triple bypass surgery. And I did talk to him this morning. He was in the hospital for 3 weeks, but he is doing great and he's feeling good and he sounds real perfect. And he said he was probably going to go out and get a haircut today. So he's coming around. So I just wanted to know that I told him that we were all thanking him and I was going to give a report on it today. My second announcement is, you know, we've been connected with the Salvation Army here for many years, over 25 years for that matter. And later the sheet is going to go around. But I wanted to invite all of you to a Salvation Army event that Ernie Faulkner and Anthony Blackman and myself are sponsoring here at the club Thursday night for the Salvation Army. It's not an asking, it's for information and the programs and where the Salvation Army is going, etc. It's more of an informational kind of thing. And we would love for as many of you to come as possible this Thursday night at 6:30 here. Appreciate you attending. If you help us out.
How's Jerry Miller doing?
Beg pardon?
How's Jerry Miller doing?
Glad you asked. Well, I was supposed to pick him up and bring him today. And about 30 minutes ago, she said, don't come get Jerry. He just fell out in the yard. And so I think he's bleeding, something like that. She didn't think he was hurt, but he had to help him up and said he can't come. So I was going to go back by and check on him. But he's supposed to go to something tonight. We're supposed to carry him to Page Walker tonight for the award thing. He's not involved with the award thing. But anyway, he's suffered this hip problem for weeks. He finally had a hip replacement and he can walk. He's out of pain and he's doing great, except for the fall that I don't know about. I think he was bleeding from that.
And Ralph, who was it that had the heart attack?
Say what?
He had the heart attack.
Curtis West.
Curtis was.
Yeah, he was at the right place at the right time. He drove on Monday with the doctor Tuesday morning to the straight to the hospital. He had surgery like that. He was smart enough to go quick. Yeah. And he managed. Good.
We'll definitely keep Curtis in our thoughts. And as we do that, let's do the same for Ron Fitzsimmons. I was in touch with Ron yesterday and today, and he's over at Duke having a minor enough procedure not to be overly concerned about it, but major enough procedure that we all ought to have in our thoughts. So if you'll keep Ron and Curtis and Jerry in mind. Speaking of the Salvation Army, you said that it's an information given, not an ask and forget, Ralph. We got the get part covered here. On a couple of tables, I've created a sign-up sheet for our annual bell ringing for the Salvation Army. So there's 2 copies. If you all will take a look at that and circulate them. I wanted to give those that are here in the room and online a chance to sign up first before we distribute kind of a sign-up genius. I also know that paper and pencil is perfectly acceptable technology in addition to online. We've got 8 days, December 8, 9, and 10, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and December 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. Did I get that right? 8 days. So we have about 80 shifts to cover, which would mean there's plenty of room for each of us to do a couple of shifts. And I know that this is one of the favorite service activities of the club. I want to thank Cary Ashworth for all the work that he's done year after year after year to help keep us connected. He's just up to his neck in his work. And so this year, he's asked me if I can help. So sign up now, and I will enter all of these signups to our tracking, and we'll go from there. It's going to be a great event, and I look forward to retaining the fundraiser champion trophy. And I'm sure Ernie will take great pride in our doing that as well. So keep that in mind. I'm trying to see, it looks like Mary did not make it online this afternoon, but I did want to share that she has tabulated the final Polio Plus campaign contributions through the generosity of, I believe it was 19 members she quoted on our board call last week, making various contributions, including the 10 that were required on the monthly. We will contribute, including the $1,000 from the club, not quite $3,000 to the Polio Plus campaign over the next year, through the end of this Rotary year. That's a fantastic, I mean, I just give the club a round of applause. Your generosity, but what's even greater about that is that with the 2-to-1 match of the Gates Foundation, that means that, you know, your efforts generated nearly $9,000 worth of contributions to the battle against, to eradicate polio, so thank you. Along those lines, that was our focus really through October and into the early part of November. Dorcas Ministries, I'll speak on behalf of Howard Manning, is running its season of Thanksgiving virtual fundraiser, so I'll just put a plug in for that. There are a number of table captains that are members of this club that would love to have you make a contribution to their page, so if you have any questions about how to get involved and make a donation to Dorcas and all the great work they do, you can contact one of us. And I also wanted to let you know that the E-Club for Environmental Sustainability is running a service project this weekend on the 13th of November, Saturday. They'll be doing a litter pickup at Yates Mill Pond between noon and 2. They're looking for 25 Rotarian volunteers to have lunch first. It's nice to get fed first and then do the work, don't you think? And do a litter pickup. They'll provide vests, pickers, bags, everything that you need in order to participate in that. So there's a sign up genius. Let me know if you have an interest there and I can get you the information. On that, hey, yes, sir, Rob Brooks. Yes, please.
Hello, everyone. So I just wanted to let you all know that it's got cool outside. And you know what that means?
It's chilly.
For chilly, right? So we are, I want to let you all know that planning has begun for our, will be our 19th chili dinner. And it may not look like that. The committee is actually meeting this afternoon to help figure out what our next steps are going to be for these quite and we're facing some challenges with the food and the venue this year. So we're working to try to solve those challenges. And if you'd like to participate in those conversations, I invite you to our meeting this afternoon, or feel free to email me if you'd like to be involved. But we're looking forward to a successful chili dinner event, regardless of what it looks like, and we'll keep everybody posted. But again, if you want to be involved, please let me know, and look forward to talking. Thanks.
Thank you, Rod. And lastly, but never least, I would like to call on Renee Spell, who can give us an update.
Hello, everyone. I'm in the car, so just listen to my voice. Coming up on December the 7th, we will not have a meeting at McGregor that day because it is our annual Christmas dinner. We weren't able to get together last year. We had a nice virtual event, but we are back in person at Prestonwood in the Oak Room where we had our banquet back in June. You will be getting an e-vite this afternoon with all the particulars of pricing and time, and just look forward to everyone being together again. I don't like to rush Christmas past Thanksgiving, but it's all upon us, and I just wanted to make sure you all have that noted, and we will look forward to being together again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Renee. Appreciate that update. We look forward to a great party. Entertainment too. She's working on some great entertainment, so we'll keep you posted on that. All right, before we get to our program, miracle moments. Do we have any miracle moments to share for today? Kevin Peach.
Yes, sir. My wife and I welcomed our first born into the world on October 4th. It was a little dramatic. Emily spent a couple of weeks in the hospital. Baby's still there, but today the doctors told us that she's probably coming home Thursday or Friday.
Wow. Fantastic. That's a double miracle, Kevin. Congratulations. Any others? Any miracle moments to share online? All right, then, without further ado, can I ask Pat Hudson to come and introduce our program for today? Pat.
What did you think?
I'm happy to introduce you today to Sheila Saia, who is working with a team of scientists at the State Climate Control Office of North Carolina at NC State. She's also an adjunct faculty member in the Department of Biological and Agricultural Engineering at NC State. In her role at the State Climate Control Office of North Carolina, she leads outreach and research efforts for the Environmental and Climate Observing Network, which is a network of over 40 weather stations across North Carolina. Her current research uses data analytics, which includes data wrangling, which I really want to hear about, statistical and physically based modeling, and data visualizing to predict and minimize human impacts on water resources at both the regional and the national levels. She's passionate about open science and broadly interested in research questions, exploring the relationships between humans, climate, and water resources, both water quantity and water quality. And when she's not working, she enjoys riding on her bicycle, rock climbing, cooking for friends, and drawing. And I found out that she rides the bus from Durham to her work every day. So she's really environmentally safe.
Can go back one more. Great. All right. Well, thank you all for having me. My name is Sheila Saia. Thanks for the introduction, Pat. I'm the Associate Director of the State Climate Office in North Carolina. I really appreciate the invitation today, and I'm really excited to talk to you about climate change in North Carolina and what our office is doing to address this pressing issue. All right, so if you feel comfortable, can you please raise your hand if you've heard of the State Climate Office of North Carolina? So don't be shy. At least one person, a couple people. All right, please raise your hand if you've heard of the International Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC for short. You. Is it hard to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I will take it off. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And can you raise your hand if you're interested in learning more about climate change? Okay, all right, I'm glad I'm here. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background. We can advance. And then I'll jump into climate change and what our office is working on. So to tell you a little bit about myself, I am an environmental engineer by training, and I have a background in water resources management. I study the hydrologic cycle and how humans impact and are impacted by the water around us. As an example that Pat kind of mentioned, I've done some research on how both urban development and climate change can combine and impact stream flow into the future in Western North Carolina. I'm really passionate about reproducible research and coding, and in my free time, I help to co-organize a group here in the Research Triangle that supports women and non-binary folks to learn more about coding. It's called Our Ladies RTP. And I also work at the State Climate Office of North Carolina with environmental scientists, meteorologists, social scientists, and we all work together to address weather and climate issues across the state. So just to give a little bit of an intro on the State Climate Office of North Carolina, we are located at NC State University on Centennial Campus. We are a public service center, so we provide weather and climate-related support to people and communities across the state. And staff-wise, we are the second largest state climate office in the US, second only to Oklahoma, maybe soon to change. Soon will be fun, hopefully. And for more information, you can visit our webpage. The link is there, and I can share these slides with everyone. And we're also on Twitter, so you can follow us on Twitter. And all right, so here's the roadmap for my talk today. I'm gonna start by giving a short introduction to some fundamental climate change concepts. Then I'll talk about climate change in North Carolina. Last but not least, I'll talk about how you can take action to stop climate, including, and I'll give some examples of how I'm doing this personally and how we are doing this at the State Climate Office. Okay, so I'll start with greenhouse gases. You may have heard that word floating around in the news and in other social medias, because greenhouse gases are really important to understanding and stopping climate change. So when I say greenhouse gases, I mean carbon dioxide, or CO2 for short. Another greenhouse gas is methane, which is CH4 on the slide. Also nitrous oxide, N2O. And then we have a group of gases called F gases, and these are typically found in like refrigerants and coolants. So if you focus on the image on the left, you can see some of the solar radiation from the sun is entering the atmosphere, and it warms the planet. So our atmosphere is made up of these greenhouse gases, and their job is to keep that heat from the sun in. And so this layer of protection, the atmosphere that we have around Earth, is really what enables Earth to be habitable, as NASA would say. So greenhouse gases, they keep some of that solar radiation in so that Earth is warm enough for humans, for wildlife, for plants, and microorganisms, and they can survive and thrive on Earth. Greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are kind of like, you can kind of think of them as a blanket or a pile of blankets, which is on the right side of this image. And so the atmosphere insulates the Earth just like a blanket will keep you warm. But we all know that if you put on like tons and tons of blankets, you're gonna get like really uncomfortable and really hot. So it's the same for greenhouse gases. If there's too much of them in the atmosphere, this can cause the planet to become too hot and warm up too quickly. So the next important concept to understanding climate change is the terminology and the difference in some terminology, specifically weather and climate. So when I say weather, this refers to timescales on the order of days to weeks. So you might like open up your phone, you have your weather app, right? And you're really used to seeing something like the top left figure there, where it's temperature and then time, and you're always used to seeing that like big warm spike in the middle of the day, and it's usually colder in the mornings and the evenings, right? So we expect that that kind of cyclical pattern is going to repeat like day after day, right? It's going to be warmer in the afternoon than it is in the morning and the evening. So this is climate, thinking about days and weeks. But on the other hand, on the right side of this slide, climate refers to timescales that are on the order of decades to centuries. And so this figure here with the bar chart is taken from the North Carolina State Climate Report, which was published last year. The gold bars in this plot are the observed annual temperature average for a 5-year period for a given 5-year duration. So we have temperature on the y-axis and the 5-year period on the x-axis. And the lines and the dots, that represents that average annual temperature in North Carolina each year. And so if we look at this plot, we can see that there is a point around 1960 where both the bars and the points are trending upwards. I'm sorry, I don't have a pointer. But basically what we're seeing is since the 1960s, the average annual temperature in North Carolina has increased over a period of that decadal timescale. So this decadal change in temperature in North Carolina is what climate scientists mean when they're talking about the term climate change. So I really like this quote from Dr. Frederica Otto, who is a co-author of the 6th IPCC, or International Panel on Climate Change report that was just they just published this past summer. And she is a climate scientist, and she was on, there's a podcast I listen to very regularly called the 538 Politics podcast. And they had a special episode on climate models. So I was like, this is my episode. And she was talking about how when she's asked by reporters to explain whether a particular weather event that we have is weather or climate, she often reminds them that all weather events are happening in a changing climate. So you can't really say like, this is definitely, climate change from this one hurricane or this one flood. But when we take them all together, then we can say over this decadal scale or this century scale, this is or is not indicative of climate change. All right. So the next question is maybe what role are we as humans playing in climate change? And so this summary figure is taken from that same IPCC report that was just published this past summer. And it helps to look at, so I'll break it down a little bit for you. So on that y-axis, we have the change in global surface temperature. So how hot is the surface of the globe on average? And how much is it changing? So 2 degrees Celsius means that it got 2 degrees warmer. And then we have the x-axis is showing the time, so the year. And so if you focus first on that blue band, that is the range of computer simulations that have just included natural emissions, so emissions from like this lake or a volcano or things like that. And you can see that it pretty much hovers around the 0 degree Celsius line. But if you look at the other, the brownish, orangish line, like colored line, that represents the range of computer simulations when we include not only the natural emissions, but also human emissions of greenhouse gases. And we can see that around that 1960 period, that band, it starts to shift up, right? And so the other important thing to note in this plot is we also know, so we have these computer simulations, but we also have measurements of the percent of the change in global air temperature over time. And that is indicated by the black line. And that black line matches up really well with that orangish, brownish band. So what this means is that the observed data is tracking with the curve that includes human emissions. Next. And so therefore, from this international the Panel on Climate Change report, which compiled over 14,000 peer-reviewed scientific articles and summarized these findings for 190 countries around the world, they concluded that it is unequivocal that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean, and land. So I've been talking a lot about climate change on the global scale, but I'll admit that at least for me, it's difficult to really picture what this means for me and for other North Carolinians. So we live in a really great state. North Carolina is especially unique because of its wide range of ecosystems, from the mountains in the west to the Piedmont in the center of the state, all the way to the coast in the east. And so these ecosystems really support diverse sectors from forestry, crops, and wild and livestock agriculture to tourism and many other sectors. And so given these diverse ecosystems, as North Carolinians, we've also, together, we've experienced a wide range of extreme weather events throughout the state. So we've experienced hurricanes, droughts, wildfires, flash floods, and here are some recently notable extreme weather events. So we have flooding after Hurricane Florence in 2018 in Lumberton, North Carolina. In summer of 2007, there was a long-standing drought, and this is a photo of the lake up in Waynesville, North Carolina. There was the Lake Lure fire in Lake Lure, North Carolina, back in fall of 2016. And then just recently, there was a large flash flood in Asheville's Biltmore Village this past summer due to a tropical storm that came up from Texas. So we are experiencing extreme weather here in North Carolina. So I'll just share some findings from the 2020 North Carolina Climate Science Report that I mentioned earlier. And you can think of this report as like the state's version of the International Panel on Climate Change report, because it really summarizes the state of the art in science and peer-reviewed scientific studies on climate change in North Carolina. And so first, we know that annual average temperatures in North Carolina have increased 1 degree since 1895. That might not seem like a lot, but it is very likely that North Carolina temperatures will continue to increase depending on the choices that we make by 2050. Second, scientists have observed no long-term trend in annual precipitation in North Carolina, but it's very likely that extreme rainfall will become more intense and more frequent. The third thing is that it's virtually certain that sea levels along our coast are going to rise, and that these coastal communities will experience high tide flooding daily by 2100. Third, it's virtually certain, Fourth, there's a low confidence that the number of hurricanes that make landfall in North Carolina will change, but it is very likely that we'll experience the impacts of hurricanes either passing us by or coming up from the Gulf Coast. And so it is likely that, we are going to experience droughts, floods, and wildfires, and they will be more intense and more frequent. Okay, so those 4 points that I just made can be a lot to take in, and I know that. So I think it's helpful for me, at least, to look at surveys like this one from the Yale Climate Change Opinions Project for more information on how and when people think and act on climate change. So my colleagues and I at the State Climate Office of North Carolina really like these data sets, and they break down the survey results by county. And here's an example for North Carolina. And it's really interesting to see that. So here they asked folks, it's the percent of adults who think global warming is happening. So they're asked, how likely do you think global warming is, that it's actually happening? And then they responded. And so here we see that 72%, so this 72% is for the whole United States. And we had 72% of people in the United States think that global warming is happening last year. And this is actually up from 63% in 2015. So we have some progress. Some people, more and more people are starting to think that global warming is happening. And I just wanted to caveat this with that about 97% of climate scientists have concluded that human-caused climate change is happening, and that's a statistic from the American Association for the Advancement of Science. So the next slide. So now, you know, 72% of adults in the US think global warming is happening, but we see that only 35% of them are willing to discuss global warming. So this is interesting to me and my colleagues at the State Climate Office of North Carolina, because it really means that we still have a lot of opportunities to help others bridge this gap. So how can we engage people and get them talking about how climate change is affecting them, and then how can they make changes to stop climate change? All right. So I will admit that climate change, to me personally, is very overwhelming. It's difficult, and it's sad for me to read through these climate change reports as like a human being on Earth. But as a human and as a scientist, I have really been seeing more and more signs of hope as people come together to take action to stop climate change. So I recently picked up this book, All We Can Save, and I really enjoyed reading it. They talk about, so it brings together artists, scientists, and activists, and they present solutions to stop climate change. Another really interesting website I found recently is this one from the American Association for the Advancement of Science, or AAAS, and it's called How We Respond, and they've collected a number of different stories related to communities and individuals that are responding and adapting to climate change. So you can read through those and learn about what other folks are doing. And there's a couple different websites that have done that as well, and I've included those links there. Next slide. I also always love when scientists use art to explore different concepts. So one artist, Jill Pelto, she's a glaciologist, so she studies glaciers. And she has these really cool pieces of art where she includes data into her watercolors, and she's been featured on Time. And then of course, I find the Fridays for the Future and the Youth Climate Strike to be very inspiring. And here's a photo of youth climate change activist Greta Thunberg leading that effort. So lots of people are making progress, but it still feels, you know, really daunting to know what I can do personally. So I often ask myself, you know, what can I really do to take action, and how do I fit into all of this? So I really strive to do three things. First, I really try to apply what I'm an expert in. So I think of the skills that I have and how I could use them to fight climate change. So for example, I really enjoy coding and data wrangling. So I recently volunteered to help. Basically, we're given a data set, and we had to kind of make sense out of it and analyze it. And the application for this data set was to develop urban heat maps for Raleigh and Durham. And so that can help folks adapt to heat stress in the face of climate change. The second thing I do is I use my voting and buying power. So as an example, 2 years ago, I decided to start offsetting my flights. So for each flight, I use an online calculator. Just Google like online carbon emissions. You can figure out how much you will emit for a given trip that you're taking. And then you can, there are also calculators you can determine how much it would cost to offset that. And then I will pick a local charity that addresses climate change here in Raleigh and Durham and Chapel Hill, and I'll donate that funding I'll donate some money to them based on how many miles I'll be flying. The third is I listen to others and I try to find common ground. So as an example, in the climate office now, we're working on a project to better understand how farmers are planning for climate change. And so one of the first things we're going to do is survey them and have interviews with them to try to get a feel for what decisions they're making, what information they need, and then what we can do to help them fill that gap and make better decisions in the face of a changing climate. So I'm a really optimistic person, so I try to use those, like, you know, I try to motivate myself. I take the, you know, emotions that are kind of like daunting and overwhelming, and I try to switch them and to help them and use them to motivate me to do better each day. So I strive to start today, start small, be kind to myself, and to support friends and community. So you're not going to be able to do everything at once, right? It's just not realistic. But you can, you know, bike to work one day per week, or, you know, decide you're going to stop using, or you're going to buy things with less plastic packaging. And it's okay if you don't always meet the expectations you set out with. And it's going to take more than just our own individual efforts to fight climate change. We need our governments to step in and step up as leaders to take action and provide folks with incentives. So I know I have like no minutes left, so you can go to the next slide. And I just wanted to share what we're doing at the State Climate Office. So you can go to the next slide. So we have a three-pronged mission, and that focuses on research, education, and extension, and monitoring. So the next. And we have a number of different projects that address these missions. We have a data portal that's open to the public, and people can go, you can go, or, you know, some of the state agencies can go to get the data that we collect, the weather and climate data that we collect, and use that to make decisions. We have a number of tools to help folks make decisions either about fire weather planning, like the North Carolina Forest Service. We also have this wet bulb globe temperature tool that helps us predict heat stress in the summer months. And then we have this new climate trends plotter, which helps people explore different temporal patterns in climate across North Carolina. And I also wanted to plug the EcoNet, which Pat mentioned. So EcoNet is one of my important roles, or maintaining and managing and growing the EcoNet is one of my important roles at the State Climate Office. EcoNet stands for Environment and Climate Observing Network. So we have 43 research grade weather stations that are collecting data every minute, sending it back to our office, and then making that available through our data portal. And this is a drawing of one of the stations. You can find more at our website. And this is actually what one of the stations looks like. So this is our station at Lake Wheeler. And the map shows where all of our stations are located, those 43 stations. This is just a snapshot of air temperature yesterday at 4:30, but we have other variables you can explore on our website, the link there. And then I just wanted to leave you with this. So climate change is here, but there are many ways that we can take action now to stop it. And by we, I mean as individuals, but also as a collective. And the last couple of slides are organizations and resources is the next one. So I'll definitely share these slides. And then last slide is, I wanted to say thank you again for having me. This is a picture of one of our EcoNet stations on Bearwell Mountain out in the western part of the state that one of our field techs took in July. So thank you very much.
Sheila, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always good to hear information about climate change and things that we can potentially do to help the situation. So we appreciate your being here to express our gratitude. These are cards that are made by Jerry Miller, who is one of the founders of this club, as a matter of fact, and also a locally renowned artist. So thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it. And
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'll add my thanks, Sheila. I really appreciate you sharing all that information. It's reminds me, was it Mark Twain said, you know, everybody talks about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. I appreciate that you and the climate office are doing something about climate, if not the weather. So thank you for all of that. Great program. Thanks for arranging that, Pat. All right, so we have a very short list of special days this week. Friday, November 12th is an anniversary day for Paul and Audrey Sossman. So Paul, heads up. It's on the way. Happy anniversary to you. Paul's going to be busy because he also has next week's program, which I'm very pleased that Mayor Harold Weinbrecht will be joining us. All of our programs are great. Having the mayor here is a special program, so I really hope that we can have a great turnout, strong, timely turnout, and look forward to hearing what the mayor will share with us. So Paul, thank you for arranging that. He will speak over a meal of pork chops with roasted potatoes and green beans, and don't forget the mustard gravy. In 2 weeks, Pat Hudson will have the program again with Jim Kilpatrick, who represents Flying Bandits, which is a fascinating. Go to YouTube and look up Flying Bandits and take a look at all the videos that they have out there. Fantastic group that salutes veterans, so it's appropriate that we have them near to Veterans Day. Again, thank you, Sheila, for joining us. Thank you, Pat, for arranging it. Thank you, all of you, for taking a beautiful November afternoon to come and be together. We'll look forward to coming again next week this time. And if I can ask Paul to please, you're an active guy today, Paul. If I can ask you to lead us out on the four-way test.
The things we think, say, and do.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Our meetings adjourned.